Color me shocked, Bieniemy already making waves.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
You are Locked On Chiefs, your daily Kansas City Chiefs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to another episode of Locked On Chiefs, and we are going to just dive right into it. There are a lot of updates from OTAs. Media was allowed to be at the session today. A lot to talk about. A little bit later in the show, we're going to talk about what comes next. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about who is making progress. But we're going to start with you better get it right, and you better get right after it. And that is the story of the day. Eric Bieniemy is not wasting any time getting on to even Patrick Mahomes and the offense.
Yeah, zero latitude given. If you're scared, you better call somebody because Bieniemy is not putting up with this. And I love the fact that it's just 7-on-7s in OTAs, and he's still like, y'all can't get this right. Get off the field. We got to sort this out. And honestly, I think nipping issues like that in the bud right now sets the tone for the rest of the year. That you're responsible for your job. You're responsible for helping the guy next to you with his job. And make sure we're all on the same page because you can't relearn stuff through the year. You got to get installed right now so you can build on next week at mandatory minicamp. We'll talk about that later. Then you got to build on it for camp. You got to build on it for the preseason games. And then you got to continue to build. So this is setting the foundation to me. And I think this is a noticeable difference from what we've had the last few years.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to be really curious to see how this continues going forward. Eric Bieniemy has a lot of pull, obviously, in that room, and he should as the offensive coordinator. But the reality is, and some people may look at this and say, well, why is Patrick Mahomes having to be, take off the field for not getting something right? It's OTAs. This is exactly the time to get this taken care of and to, figure things out. And, it's funny because one of the videos that was put out today was Patrick Mahomes running a handoff to Kenneth Walker from under center. Interesting to see something like that when everybody talks about that's not going to happen very much in Kansas City. I do think that you're going to have a newer looking offense in 2026, and that's going to be part of it, and Bieniemy is going to make sure of it.
Oh, I beg to differ. It is going to happen a lot more in Kansas City because you have to set guys up to win. You can't set them up to fail. And Walker is better from under center. Honestly, I think it adds a better aspect to the play action for Patrick Mahomes if he's under center more to hand the ball up. So it has to be. They have to change things. And maybe I'm giving too much faith to the coaching staff, but I really do think after everything else that we've learned this offseason, that they really took the opportunity to self-scout and they really are going to make the changes that are necessary. That's what I believe.
Well, and you look at it, it goes even further. I mean, the past several years, they have not had a good running game. It has been, I would stop short of saying atrocious, but not much. So the reality is you have to get better. You have to have a better running game, especially with Patrick Mahomes coming back from an injury. You have to be in a situation where you can take care of him and make sure he's not having to throw the ball 40 times a game. And part of that is going to be using your $15 million a year running back and using him the best way that you can possibly use him. And if you go look at the splits, Mahomes is good under center. They just haven't done it a lot.
And I think that's honestly because both he and Andy Reid get carried away with the higher end concepts that they're trying to do. And I think they have been reluctant in years past to break it back down to the basics, to take it back down to the ground floor. And that's what the under center run game is it sets the tone for everything else.
Well, and I wonder if it's not just that they get in their own way near as much as it is they knew they didn't have a good running game in the past, so they didn't try to focus on making it better. They just knew that they were going to do what they thought was in the best interest of being successful on offense, and doing what Mahomes does best is what they should be trying to do. And I don't understand why they went away from it, but if they're not thinking that the running game that they had could really do it very well anyway, I get it to an extent. But now you have a guy that is good under center, that is good when running behind a QB that's under center. So I think that they need to focus on that. They need to push into it. But when you flip it over to the other side, there were some also interesting things that were said by Steve Spagnuolo.
Yeah. I mean, and there's plenty there. I think the one that stands out the most, we should probably just put it out here right now. For those of you that, like me, were a little frustrated with the pass rush last year, there was a specific injury to one George Karlaftis that played a big impact. And I find it very interesting that Steve Spagnuolo let it out that, hey, he broke his hand and he had surgery during the bye week, which we didn't hear jack about. I know he was able to play through it, but I believe the NFL may come calling because that's still something you are supposed to report on injury reports, and they did not.
Well, and it said that it was his power hand too. So it wasn't just that he broke his hand, it was his power hand, which is going to take away from his ability to pass rush. Now, we'll see whether or not it's going to make a big difference, but I know a lot of people were down on Karlaftis last year. I have argued multiple times with multiple different people that he isn't going to be your number one pass rusher. That's not what he's designed to be. He is designed to be a good number two, and they're paying him like a good number two. Look what they just gave Nate Herbig in Pittsburgh. They just signed him to a 4-year deal, $100 million. This is exactly what Karlaftis is meant to do. And I understand maybe you don't think that he's on the same page or same level as Herbig, but my point is like, this is the going rate for that type of pass rusher, and they're paying him what is expected. And then you got Myles Garrett, who is blowing everybody out of the water, and obviously, the guy from the Texans, Anderson, as well, which is just absolutely resetting the market.
It's a bit crazy. And I would argue that George Karlaftis can be better than Herbig. I think the two of them, the ends that they're playing against are a very, very different situation. George Karlaftis doesn't have anyone else to flush him, but anyone to him but Chris Jones. Yep. And the edges need to be a pair as far as I'm concerned. And maybe that turns into R. Mason. We'll talk about him in a bit as well. But I think really when you look at cost versus return, I would say he's on track to be competitive with that Herbig thing. So I feel like that contract's actually pretty much in line. Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy. I didn't look at all the numbers with Herbig, but to me, all this is about what you would expect. And the fact that they paid him a year early gave him the ability to pay him a little bit less than he would have gotten on the open market. So this is kind of what you're expecting, and this is the kind of deals that this team is going to be able to do when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, and you have a ton of money tied up in your offensive line, because you do still have a ton of money in your offensive line at this point, and Chris Jones is making almost $40 million a year. So all of those play into what you're dealing with right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, the coaches had some things to say, but it's the players that make the plays. Who's making progress? That's next.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Summer's supposed to be the season everyone looks forward to. Vacations, longer days, more time outside, more plans with family and friends. But for a lot of people, summer can also feel surprisingly overwhelming. Schedules get packed, routines change, and sometimes it feels like you're trying to do everything at once instead of enjoying the season. That's why it's important to make time for yourself too. And therapy can help you create a vision of your summer that feels manageable and enjoyable. Summer could fill up fast before you even realize it, whether it's family vacations or just doing things out of the normal, kids sports. All of that adds to stress. It's easy to say yes to everything and forget to slow down for yourself. And having time to reset mentally can make a huge difference in how you experience the season. With over 30,000 therapists and more than 6 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched with a licensed therapist based on your needs and preferences. And if the match doesn't feel right, you can switch anytime. You don't have to say yes to everything this summer. Find support and therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. And if you haven't already, go check out lockedonchiefs.supercast.com. Get ad-free audio, get access to our Discord server. You can talk to Ryan and I on Discord. Going to have a lot more coming out, especially as training camp is right around the corner. I know it seems like it's a while away, but it's going to be here before you know it. That's just the way that works. When we dive into this, it's a question of who's making progress and who are the coaches talking about. And you hear different things about Xavier Worthy, you hear Tyquan Thornton making, big catches downfield, which is exactly what you want to hear. You hear, Mahomes doing what Mahomes is used to doing. But there are some defensive guys that are making a name for themselves right now as well.
Yeah, and I think Steve Spagnuolo is very complimentary of Mansour Delane. I felt like it was a little bit of a stretch about how much Steve wanted to attribute the story of Delane, but I did find it very intriguing that he thought he could have come out after leaving Maryland. And that was a conversation that I had between Dan and I once we did his film. That we kind of felt that way too, and it's pleasant to hear that Steve Spagnuolo thought the same thing, because that additional jump in the level of competition in the SEC when he went to LSU, I think that makes really the top 10% rise even farther. And so I think that sealed it, in that I don't see any reason. We haven't heard any reports, at least I haven't, about, Steve Spagnuolo doing the whole arm around Mansour Delane and going everywhere with them like he did with Trent McDuffie back in the day. But I'm guessing it's because we're just not seeing as much. My guess is that he is plug and play, and they are planning on making him the number one corner that I feel that they're going to be comfortable with, just judging by the way Steve Spagnuolo was right now. Usually I find him a little bit more cagey, a little bit more like, oh, well, they got a lot to learn and stuff like that. He didn't seem like that with Delane to me.
Yeah, no, he didn't. And to be clear, it's not Maryland, it's Virginia Tech, where he went to school prior. Yeah, no worries. I was double checking that. I was like, he didn't go to Maryland first, did he? But you're right. I mean, I think Delane is going to step in. He's going to have the starting role. And one of the other corners, and this isn't necessarily a topic about specifically the corner position, but another one of the corners that was drafted this year, and Jadon Canady, sounds like he's going to be a core special teams guy. And when you're talking about a potential role for a guy that came in as your 4th round pick, I don't really care. Like, yeah, it'd be great to get a starter, somebody that can step in and start right away, but he's going to be competition to start at that slot corner role. But he is going to be a core special teamer if he's not that slot corner role, and that is a valuable position and something they absolutely need.
Yeah,
because they lost a lot of special team staff. Sorry,
and that means no matter what happens in the nickel cornerback battle, that he's going to contribute to this roster as a rookie. And that's what's important. Same thing that happened with Jaden Hicks, right? Because Jaden didn't right on the field, but he was able to contribute on special teams. Same thing with Jeff Bossel last year, right? Some guys that are a little bit deeper behind. And I won't say that Canady can't win this job. I think clearly from what I'm hearing, Kohou looks like he's pretty solid physically and that he's adapting pretty quickly, and he's probably the lead to be the nickel corner when the Chiefs hit the field.
That's a great problem to have. Sorry, I don't interrupt. It's
Absolutely.
a great problem to have. Like, I'm not upset about it. And you sign Kohou for next to nothing, and it sounds like you could have your your nickel corner. And if that ends up being the case, and Kennedy doesn't play a lot in 2026 as a defensive player, I don't care, because he's going to help you on special teams. And like I said, you lost a ton of special teams snaps when you lost Joshua Williams and all the corners that the Chiefs did have that they drafted 4 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. The other interesting thing is that it seems that they're giving Canady some looks on the outside as well, which I know that he could play at the college level. So the more you can do for the team, right? So if you're going to play teams and you're going to get reps outside, they know you can go inside because they've seen you align there. I think that's just more opportunity for you to contribute.
It's like they like versatility or something. Where have we ever heard that before?
It's always something with this team. Now, what I'm not hearing is, and I guess that I'll leave that for the next segment, what comes next, because there's a couple of things that I want to look out for. The other player making news right now is it does seem that the coaching staff is pretty pleased with what they're getting from Peter Woods. And I'm not trying to read into between the lines too much, but I'm taking this as, hey, we're right where we wanted to be, if not a little bit ahead of time. And he's giving us the energy and the impact that we had hoped for so that we can move forward. And I do think there's one quick comment that I heard Steve Spagnuolo make about Omar, about getting him healthy. And that was enlightening to me, because that feels like, okay, he's not ready. We don't know. We don't have a timeline for him, or we do have a timeline and it still is a bit, because we have to get him healthy. So in the meantime, you got to have Woods.
Yeah, and it could be that he's not fully healthy in 2026. Like, he could come back and still not be what you want him to be in 2026, and it may be 2027. There are some players that deal with that the first year coming back from the injury he had. So it's possible that ends up being the case, and you're looking at Peter Woods going, okay, we just drafted a guy that was top 10 on a lot of people's boards headed into the 2025 season, and you got him at 29. And I'm not going to call him a Chris Jones replacement because that's not fair to him. But that is really their vision in a way, is that he is going to be a Chris Jones replacement eventually, because Chris Jones is going to eventually retire. I mean, that's just reality in the way this is going to work. So he's going to step into that role, and he's got a year or 2 or 3 with, well, probably just 2 I would imagine max with 2 with Chris Jones to learn from him, and to get more of that from a veteran like Jones would be something that is going to be very good for Peter Woods.
I agree. Take advantage while you can, because Father Time does not lose.
Nope. Never does. And you sit here and you look at all of this. We talk about the offense. We talked about the offense a little bit. We talked about the defense. But you look at all these players and you look at how this is going. I would expect, we're not going to really hear anything more. I mean, we may see a little bit of video from the Chiefs because they seem to release videos. I think they have one more day of OTAs, but it's not open to the media, so they might give us a couple of highlights, tomorrow. So we're not going to have a ton to go off of. But then it's really waiting until minicamp next week, which is going to be here before you know it as well.
Yeah. Hey, and that's the evolution that we have to see them go through. You have to have the mental stability. And what I liked about one more comment about the coaching staff that I heard today was from Chad O'Shea about how they want to live in the moment. They want to take one step at a time and do what they're supposed to be doing now before they move on to the next thing, right? To be present and accountable for where you're at. He also said that he really enjoys the teaching aspect of it, which is great because they need a lot of teaching to go on in this wide receiver group.
Yeah, they do. And it's really interesting because you look at what he is dealing with and all the wide receivers and the information that he's got to get to these wide receivers that they really haven't had probably for the past couple of years, even though they did have a wide receiver coach. So I do think it's a different. I'm not going to put Chad O'Shea in the same boat that I would put Eric Bieniemy with the fire and all of the brimstone that Bieniemy likes to bring. But it does seem like he has a similar personality. And when you look at how that's going to be and how that's going to come out, you're sitting here looking at a situation where you're going to have a coach that is demanding, I'm not going to say perfection, but you to do your job and do it right. And think about how many drops the Chiefs have had in the past couple of seasons. Think about how many situations where the wide receivers weren't able to get open. This is going to be a complete focus, and it should pay huge dividends for this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just one step in that progression. We'll talk about some of the guys that are making noise now and what comes next for them, how they take the step forward next.
Support for today's episode comes from Square, the business platform that helps sellers become neighborhood favorites. Whether you're gearing up for a busy season or just trying to keep up with everyday demand, Square keeps your business running smoothly. From payments to online orders, inventory, staff, and much, much more, all in one place so you can focus on your customers, not your to-do list. Square helps businesses simplify the day-to-day while still giving them room to grow. Whether it's the digital receipt, the loyalty punch, the fact that the person behind the counter is actually looking at me instead of wrestling with the system, it all adds up. When you're not juggling 5 different tools just to make a payment and track inventory, you can actually focus on your customers, and that's what makes a neighborhood favorite. Square helps you run your businesses more smoothly, bringing payments, operations, and insights together in one place so you're ready for whatever's next. Right now, listeners can get up to $200 off Square hardware when you sign up at square.com/go/lockedonnfl. That's SQUARE.com/go/lockedonnfl. Get started with Square and build a setup that works the way that you do. What comes next? That is the big question, and I'm going to let you kick this off because I want to see where you're going.
So it's not just about who takes the next step forward, but this is where all the vets are going to be in. It is mandatory minicamp coming next week. Yep. Everybody's going to be back. Chris Jones is going to be on the field. I don't think he's participating. Travis Kelce is going to be here. It is, oh, crap, we've just been playing against the other guys. Now the Hall of Famers are coming back, right? And so you got to tick your game back up. And so if you're a guy that's trying to block Chris Jones, or if you're a guy in Kohou, maybe Canady, certainly Hicks and Shamari Connor, it's, oh, crap, Travis is back. Now I got to up my game yet again. And so what's really going to be great about next week is that the guys in the press pool are going to be out there for all 3 days. We're going to talk to Matt, Derek. You're going to hear from some of our other contacts that are actually inside the building that get to see it, because it's about sustained improvement. Show me what you can do now when a couple of guys come back that really push you a little bit farther than you've been pushed, and show me that you can learn from it.
And I will say this, we didn't get to this in the last segment that I think we should have talked about, but one thing that was said by Spagnuolo brought up talking to DeMarco Murray specifically about R. Mason Thomas and how that kind of influenced his thought process into drafting Thomas and how he can fit into this defense.
Yeah. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised to hear Steve Spagnuolo pretty much quote me word for word that R. Mason Thomas brings the juice, and that's what they needed. Now, I know Steve Spagnuolo isn't quoting me, but we literally said the same thing, except I did it before the draft.
He would have been on Therese Paylor's all juice team.
Absolutely. And that's important because I think they recognize not only with the injury that we now know about with Karlaftis, and sorry to correct myself from before, I think it was Joe Cullen that let us know that, not Steve
Yeah,
Spagnuolo.
that's right.
Sorry
it was
about
Cullen.
that, folks. Not only is there that they have to kind of recover from, because they know it was a down year, and George has talked in his pressers about, they understand that they didn't play well enough in the front in terms of the pass rush last year. But now you have somebody else that can bring that juice, and we're going to see more of it, because what we are going to see in mandatory minicamp is a chance for him to actually rush. It's not going to be full contact, but it's going to be full go in terms of like getting around the corner, getting past the tackles, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we'll also be very interested, because as of now, I have not gotten any updates about what the offensive tackles look like today, this second week of OTAs. So we definitely have more to explore there. But for me, it's going to be Josh Simmons was a first-round pick. Armisen Thomas isn't very far off of that, right? So you would hope that they're evenly matched. Josh has that year experience, right? Or most of a year experience. I also feel that Josh Simmons is trying to step his game up. So that is the number one battle that I want to see at least a few reps from next week, with Mason going against Josh, and give me what you got. Who gets to the spot first? They're not going to be like hitting each other hard or really battling, but it's going to be about who gets to the spot they need to be in first.
Yeah, and don't worry about tippers flaring. This is this time of year. This is when it starts to happen. You get guys that, they're used to playing football. They're used to being able to put their hands on people. They're used to being able to hit people, and they can't do it right now. So if tempers flare next week and you hear about a little bit of scuffle, it's not a big deal. That's to be expected. I will say this, though. You talk about Josh Simmons. I'm more curious about rotation at that R tackle, right tackle one. Who is it going to be, and are you going to see a lot of Esapole as your right tackle? Is that going to be something that they're going to be looking at continuing to do? Because it did sound like he was still getting rotations with the ones in today's practice. So if he ends up being a starting right tackle and plays, I'm not going to say plays, I will say above average, this offensive line is set for the next several years. And that would be a huge steal, especially on the contract he's under.
It would be a huge steal, but it would also be a holy cow, we screwed up. Because you have to remember, this coaching staff cut him last year. He had to be brought back.
I disagree to an extent. I understand what you're saying, but he wasn't ready when they let him go, and he still struggled at times last year, late in the season.
I don't buy that.
Okay. Well, I think that you're looking at a situation where he spent a lot of time training and getting his footwork better and doing everything in the off season, and that is what you're seeing right now. And it's all about, and it's power too. Like there's improvement from year one to year two. I understand they missed last year, but let's not forget you had Jalen Moore, you had Jawan Taylor, who you knew was going to be your starting right tackle. You had a guy in Josh Simmons who you knew was going to be either your swing tackle or your left tackle, depending on how it went after the draft. So you had all of those guys, and you still had Wanye Morris. I think they thought that they could get Pole on the practice squad and intended to keep him on the practice squad. If it ends up being better than that, it is what it is. Like another team cut him too. Didn't he go? He went to the Jets, right?
And you have a very good point. I know he's improved this season. You're 100% that. I just mean that this is the same because Andy Heck and his assistant have not changed. This is the same offensive line coach group that let him go. And so I'm saying I want to make sure that the evaluation is correct yet again, because it wasn't correct last year and they got to live up to it.
Well, but he wasn't ever going to be the starter last year because Jawan Taylor was going to be the starter last year. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you, but my point is they let him go thinking they could get him on the practice squad. They couldn't. Because at that point last year, think about who they had. They had 4 tackles that they were going to be keeping. Taylor, Simmons, Moore, and at that point, probably Morris. Like, you're still not going to get rid of a 3rd-round pick with more than 2 years left on his contract. So I get where you're coming from. I wish that they would have kept him, but they got him back at this point. I'm just looking forward to if he can actually step in and start and develop. My bigger issue, and this is the issue that I've had this entire time, they made all these changes. They did all this self-scouting. And the one thing that they could really do to help Patrick, they didn't do. If they would have let go of Andy Heck and gone out and got Stoutland or another offensive line coach,
yeah,
just imagine. And Stoutland is still sitting out there, not with a job,
not on staff. Yeah, and maybe he just needs a year off. I think a lot of coaches, and honestly, a lot of people that quote unquote retire, get to the point where like, wow, this was great. Now I'm bored. So Jeff Stoutland, I got a spot for you when you're ready.
Yeah, I would love to see that in Kansas City. I hope it does. I hope it's not a year too late, because this offensive line, I think they have the talent, and quite frankly, you have 4 of the 5 spots which I think you have to feel very good about right now. It's just a question at right tackle and what they're going to do. And at this point, what we're really arguing is Pole going to be good enough to take more spot? And even that is a good situation for Kansas City, because at this point, I don't care. You're paying more $15 million a year. You say what you want about that. Doesn't matter to me. You need to invest in the offensive line. You need to protect Patrick Mahomes. If he gets beat out by Pole and becomes the 6th offensive lineman and becomes the swing tackle, so what? You still are protecting Patrick. That's the important thing.
And I want to see where Ethan Driscoll is too. We know what Wanya Morris is, guys. We'll find out more when we find out what happened today, as well as when we get to mandatory minicamp next week.
Yeah, and Ethan Driscoll is going to be an interesting one, because he showed a lot his rookie year and wasn't able to do anything last year because he had surgery. Although I do think that was kind of a injury,
quote unquote.
Yeah. Funny how that works with Kansas City, because they've done that several times. Lots of stuff to talk about. We're going to be talking a little bit more about OTAs tomorrow, and we're going to be getting into on Chiefs Overtime the rest of the games for the rest of this week. We'll have 2 more of those this week as well. A lot more to talk about in getting you ready for Chiefs minicamp. As you said a couple minutes ago, I just forgot the word. That is going to be it for us today. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the information coming out of today's OTAs, who you're really looking forward to hearing more about in next week's minicamp. Thank you for listening today, and we will talk to you tomorrow.